Hi, so this question is based on percentage. It says Alice, Ben and Carl had some stamps. Alice had 30% of the stamps, Ben had 81 stamps, Alice had 9 more stamps than Carl. So question A is, what was the total number of stamps all three children had? So I'm going to put all this information in this table, which will make it easier for us to answer the question. The question says Alice had 30% of the stamps. So I'm going to say that the total number of stamps all three had is 100 units. This is because 30% of 100 units will give us a whole number, which will make it easy for our calculations. So 100 units into 30% will give us 30 units. So the number of stamps Alice had in terms of units will be 30. So the question says that Ben had 81 stamps, which is pretty straightforward. So Ben had 81. Next it says Alice had 9 more stamps than Carl. So the number of stamps Carl had is not given to us. So I'm just going to put that Carl had C number of stamps. So if Alice had 9 more stamps than Carl, I'm going to write that Alice had 9 plus C number of stamps. Okay, so we need to find the total number of stamps that all three had, which is 100 units. So when we look at the information here, we see that there are two variables, which is C and U. So instantly we know that we need to come up with two equations. And then we can proceed to solve the simultaneous equations. So from the question, we know that Alice had 30% of the stamps, which is 30 units. So now we can conclude that the 70% of the total number of stamps is what Ben and Carl had in total. Okay, so Ben and Carl have 70% of the total number of stamps. So 70% of 100 units is equal to 70 units. Okay, so now we can come up with our first equation. So we see that here 70 units is equal to 81 plus C. Okay, so if we take a look at the number of stamps that Alice had, we can see that we have come up with two expressions in terms of U and C. So we understand that 30 units is equal to 9 plus C. So now that we have both our equations, we need to solve these two simultaneous equations. So we see that C is common to both equations 1 and 2. So I'm simply going to deduct or minus equation 2 from equation 1 to get rid of the two C's. Okay, so to elaborate, why I choose to minus equation 2 from equation 1 to get rid of the C's is because if you look at the units here, we can see that 70 units is larger than 30 units. And if you look at the number here, 81 is larger than 9. So when we minus equation 2 from equation 1, we get a positive answer. So we will now minus equation 2 from equation 1. So this becomes minus 30 units, this becomes minus 9, and this becomes minus C. So let's solve this. So 70 units minus 30 units will be 40 units. 81 minus 9 is 72. And plus C minus C becomes 0. Now we have an equation with one variable, which is 40 units equals 72. So now we can proceed to solve this equation. If 40 units is equal to 72 stamps, 1 unit is equal to 72 divided by 40, which gives us 1.8. So question A is, what was the total number of stamps all three children had, which is the value of 100 units. So 1 unit is equal to 1.8. Therefore, 100 units is equal to 1.8 into 100. So the answer to question A is 180 stamps. Okay, so moving on to question B, it says Alice gave away some stamps to her brother and the total decreased by 10%. We need to find the ratio of the number of Alice's stamps to the total number of stamps the children had in the end. And they want the answer in the simplest form. We are not given the number of stamps that Alice gave to her brother. However, the question says that the total decreased by 10%. So in other words, the number of stamps that Alice gave her brother is 10% of the total number of stamps that they had, which is 180. First, let us find out the number of stamps that Alice gave her brother, which is 10% of 180. That would be 18 stamps. So to find the number of stamps that Alice had at the end, we need to find out the number of stamps that she had at the beginning, before she gave 18 stamps to her brother. So that would be 30 units. Alice had 30 units of stamps before she gave 18 to her brother. So we know the value of 1 unit. 1 unit is 1.8. So Alice had 30 units at first. So that will be 30 into 1.8, which is 54 stamps. And after giving away 18 stamps to her brother, she had 36 stamps left. Okay, so now we found out the number of stamps that Alice had in the end, which is 36. However, we need to remember to deduct 18 stamps from the total as well. Okay, so Alice had 36 stamps in the end, and the total number of stamps that all three children had at the end is 180 minus 18, which is 162. Okay, so the highest common factor of 36 and 162 will be 18. So 36 divided by 18 would give us 2, and 162 divided by 18 would be 9. So there you have it. The answer for question B, the ratio in the simplest form, would be 2:9.